Welcome to part 2 of the mini golf marble machine build. In part 1, I showed how I built one hole. Now you will see 3 more be built. I start by working on the hole that will wrap around the back side of the lift. I drew a wavy design for the outside of the path, and found that the best way to make a barrier for a wavy path is to just make it a bit wider and cut off the extra to use as the barrier. I add a support for the track to rest on. When I place the track, I use small clamps to hold it in place while the glue dries. I then glue on the wavy barrier. Followed by the barriers on the back side, and then do a quick test to make sure it works. I then move on to a different hole. This one will have 3 possibilities that will send the marbles through a cottage or castle, I haven't decided yet, or around either side of it. All 3 paths will converge at the next hole. This is the bottom plate. I carve out notches with a slight downward slope that will guide the marbles to where they're going next. I glue on the completed piece and use a clamp to hold it in place until I get a support pillar in there. Then I release the clamp and let the piece get a good connection to the pillar. I then add a support at the base of the pillar. Now I can add the track that leads to that hole. The slope is just steep enough that I decide to carve down the edge to make the meetup a bit more flush. Using the same technique from the wavy bit in the back, I use excess that I cut off the track to make the barrier. Once all the barriers are in place, I test it to make sure it works. I go back to finish the hole from earlier. Since a few of the sides will be covered up with landscaping, I was okay with not using complete circles for the middle and bottom layers. Again, once the track and barriers were glued on, I tested it for quality assurance. Once that was done, I could move on to another hole. This one was a bit tricky. It's comparable to a Plinko or pachinko machine, and instead of using nails, I'm using wood. After quite a bit of planning, I mark up the board in a diagonal grid. I cut out small uniform pentagon shapes to use as the bumpers on the board. This piece that I had to clamp in place has a slight tilt to it that will send the marbles down the Plinko board. I mitered the end of the board using a Dremel so that way it would lay flush with the top piece. The hole at the bottom of the Plinko board was a bit tricky. Using the piece you see here, I cut out the bottom plate, the transition piece from Plinko to hole, and the wall around the back of the hole. First, I have to place the transition piece. It was not at the desired angle, so I had to go back and adjust that. Then I could add the hole, followed by the bottom barrier. You can see how this piece will be cut and made to sit on top of the edge. I didn't like how it looked like the crescent of the moon, so I sanded it down a bit more to make it more similar all the way around. Next, I worked on the side barriers. I traced the basic outline of what was already there, then marked my cut lines, making sure to leave a tall enough barrier at the top and bottom. I sanded down the outside edge at the bottom to make a smooth transition from piece to piece. I did the same exact thing with the other side, except I made the top edge vertical so the incoming marbles had something to bump into and bounce around the Plinko board. Then I added 3 kickers on either side so the marbles would bounce around all the way down. This will wrap up part 2 of the building process. It's always fun, especially with marble machines, to test it after some significant progress has been done. As you can see here, it's working just as planned. The next video will show the construction of the loop and a few other holes. Thanks for watching.